Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chaksurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirbhishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatya Desha Tarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare
Jai Om Vishnupad Purnamansa Pariprajaka Stotra Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kunigiri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Tham Ki Jai Navadip Tham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Gangamai Ki Jai Jamadamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Welcome to all. Thank you all very much for taking part in today's Istagosthi, where pretty much anything goes. Any topic you'd like to bring up and speak about is welcome. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Shapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrasatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sadivam Sadvaitam Savatutam Parijana Setam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitamstra. Hey Krishna Guruna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prisha Panu Sute Devi Pranamami Odi Priye Pancha Kolpatarupyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Tita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare. Welcome again. And Lakshmi Moni Mataji, did you have a question or a comment or a topic? I saw your hand there for before. You're muted.
Last week you mentioned that you wanted to continue with the topic.
Continue. Api chet suracharo bhajate mam ananyapak sadhureva samantapya samyag vyavasito hisa. Well, we had quite a bit of momentum around that topic last meeting, and yes, we can continue if you'd like to do that, or we can switch tracks. I'm just the servant here. I just work here.
Me too.
Oh, Mina's hand is there.
Maybe something about some discussion on how to understand, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender to me. When Krishna says, I appear to establish religious principles. So how does that? I was in discussion with some devotees and they had a lot of confusion about that. And I didn't know how to sort through it.
Mm-hmm. Would someone like to speak to that? Oh, come on. I can, but I don't have to do all the work here, do I?
I could boldly jump in where angels fear to tread.
Very good.
I was when she was asking, I was considering how, yeah, Krishna's ultimate instruction is for everyone to give up all varieties of religion and just surrender unto him, offer their obeisances, love him, and that's the real principle of religion. And it's understood that out of how many gazillions among men, how many people are actually going to go that far? But for the rest of the crew, there have to be some religious principles to follow, just to keep the peace in the prison house. And my thought was that when Krishna comes to establish religious principles, he does it in different times, in different places, in different ways, in different avatars for different reasons. But that's one of his functions when he appears, is to set up a system by which anybody can make gradual elevation towards him ultimately. But then he also gives the opportunity for those who are at that level to just surrender unto him directly.
Tulsi Priya has a follow-up comment. Thank you, Kendra.
Yes, thank you, Kendra. By the way, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my obeisances. My comment is literally a follow-up, because I'm thinking how, we look at religion typically as something that will save us. Let me put my camera on. We want to be saved from suffering in the material world, or from repeated birth and death, which I guess is the same thing, or, from going to hell, or, getting our karmic just desserts. But, and so we take to religion, and if only just to get peace of mind, because, just life in the present is very stressful. But I feel like when he says, give all that up, is, don't try to save yourself. Let me save you, just, if you just go with it, because I take that surrender to mean whatever is. If you see everything as Krishna, then if you lose all your money in business, that's Krishna. If you get cancer, that's Krishna. If your husband divorces you, that's Krishna. And you just surrender to that, and you just accept everything as Krishna's will. And then, if you see it that way, then you are free from fear, because you're seeing everything as Krishna's mercy. So, but when we try to cling to, Obama famously said, we cling to the Bible and to the guns and whatever. We're trying to get some kind of safety in this world and some security, and it's really not possible. But when you're surrendered to Krishna, you go with the flow. It's like riding the waves, and those waves are Krishna, and you're riding, you're following wherever Krishna takes you. So that's another, it's kind of related to what my husband's saying, but I feel like this need to get saved and to have some security and peace only comes from surrendering to Krishna, and not through dharma and religion, although it can temporarily or superficially give us peace and security.
I think dharma and religion set a framework for us. Baladev Vidyabhushan, in one of his commentaries on Bhagavad Gita, makes a mention that the Vedas are more merciful than thousands of parents. And the reason he says that is because the parent will try to facilitate their child, even if their child is something wrong with them, even if they're retarded, whatever is wrong with them, they'll try to figure out a way that they can succeed. And so to some extent, the religious principles are Krishna's effort to give everyone a path back to him for as slow, as fast as you want to go. So even if you want to go back, it still helps to have some guardrails to hold on to in order to keep you on the straight and narrow. So I see the religious principles as a facilitating aspect of spiritual life as well.
Are you arguing that they shouldn't be given up?
Ultimately, they should be given up when one has completely freed themselves from any need to interact with the material at all. And that when one has achieved ultimate surrender, then sure, you can give them up, but they'll kind of be your default behavior anyway, pretty much. But don't give them up prematurely, because I think I remember when we first joined and we heard that you know, we were gonna, this process was gonna give us pure devotional service. Some of us thought, well, you know, give me a few months. And then later we thought, maybe give me a year. And now we're like, maybe a few lifetimes, maybe 1,000 lives. You know, the realization of where we're at ultimately requires assistance, and admitting that you need assistance. So don't give up assistance prematurely. It's a sign that you're maybe not doing some valid introspection.
Apurva and Kamalini. Thank you, Maji. Apurva, Kamalini.
Sorry. Yeah. Have you come to a conclusion? Because I was at the edge of my seat last week, and I'm trying to understand what the situation is with Reformation. And there is also a BTG article that came out a long time ago, which I don't know if you remember or you're familiar with. So I would ask, yeah, have you come? And
Yeah, a really bad echo. Okay.
so the question is, have you come to the conclusion? I'm very interested.
It's not.
Last time Maharaj muted himself, and that cut the echo, but
It
then he
might be
couldn't
that he
unmute
has,
himself.
and it might be that he has outside speakers, and the speakers are feeding back into his microphone.
Perhaps if we just mute ourselves unless we're speaking.
That would include Maharaj, correct?
Oh, can you hear me?
Now, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm wondering if you came to a conclusion about last week's topic, which I still feel very incomplete about, because we were all very anxious to come to a conclusion, I thought. And it seemed
Okay, so let's spend just a few moments more on this topic, and then shift back to that topic, and keep in mind, Apurva Prabhu, if you will, where you'd like us to start on that. Okay, so you can guide us, you can direct us.
I'd like to.
Are you still on Dharma Kantra Tattva? And I have Meena first.
Yeah.
So I have Meena first, and then you're in.
Maybe, can you hear me okay? Is it echoing?
Yes.
There you go. Maybe some of the confusion of trying to balance that out is, on the one hand, abandon all varieties of religion, but on the other hand, establishing religious principles. Maybe they're not exactly the same. Like I was looking at, what was I looking at? Material nature and material elements. And when three modes of material nature in the Gita, and it says the material nature is composed of the three modes of material nature. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I thought it was earth, air, water, fire. What is this? And then I realized there's a difference. They're two different things, material elements and material nature. So maybe something like that going on here also. Like, how can you abandon religious principles when the highest religious principle is to surrender to Krishna? So maybe it's not exactly the same.
You're muted, Maharaj. All right.
Thank you, Lakshmi Mami, and thank you, Meena. Yes, there's certainly something to be said for that. I have a thought, but I'm going to wait till Panchatattva Prabhu speaks.
I immediately started thinking about, oh, now we got an echo again. Can anybody hear me?
You're
Yeah.
good. Go ahead.
Okay. I started thinking immediately about 6th Canto Bhagavatam, and oddly enough, it's kind of related to Apichet Siddharacharo and Ajamil's plight, and the Yamadutas making the argument that, listen, the religious principles are defined by the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, according to our leader, Yamaraj. And Yamaraj goes on later to explain that real religious principles are established by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Sarva Dharmam Pratyajya, abandon all. But right before that, he says, Manmana Bhavama Bhakto Manjaji Mamaskuru. Mame Vaisyasi Satyam Te Pratijani Priyosine. Surrender unto me. You offer your obeisances to me, offer your homage to me, like that. So right there is where Krishna is describing the real ultimate religious principle. And everything else is subordinate to that. That's all I have to say. Hare Krishna.
I think the comments seem to be all gravitating around this point that there's an ultimate religious principle that we're never meant to give up, and that's the principle of devotional service to Krishna, ultimately of love for Krishna. Prema Bhakti should never be given up, but everything below that we should be willing to give up, especially Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. This is Kvaitava Dharma. It's kicked out of Bhagavad Dharma. So below Bhagavad Dharma, everything should be dispensable. We should be ready to give them up for the higher principle of service to Krishna. And yet, as Lakshmi Moni said, it's not that we say, okay, I give up all these, I might as well be irreligious or haphazardly religious because now I'm a devotee of Krishna and everything's for Krishna. These religious principles are there, but ultimately we're ready to sacrifice them all for the interests of the personality of Godhead. I think we all agree about that. We're sort of exploring it.
Athena has her hand.
Athena has a hand. Yes, Athena.
Hare Krishna. Oh, echo. I think Miraj covered a main point that I wanted to share in saying that all other dharmas other than under Bhagavad Dharma, it can be given up. Just like when I had heard here in this verse, Dharma could be Varnashram Dharma. Give up your duties to family, give up your, and you see this with the Goswamis, leaving their homes, leaving their families, even sannyasis, or even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu leaving his mother. That's one sense a dharma one has in duty. But I also heard when one comes to the most like highest and elevated platform, religious principles or laws and institutions in one sense, quote unquote, don't apply. I don't remember the name, but one devotee was giving an example of this. I think it was some Babaji and is very tied to his deities, and he had the Vatsalya rasa. And so when he was offering food, he told the deities, don't eat it yet, don't eat this boga yet, it's not ready. And he left and came back and it was already eaten. So in order to, in one sense, chastise or, put the deities in kind of time out, he put them in another room and closed the door. I mean, in one sense, to us, we think that's like the most, like, how could anyone put the deities and put them in time out? Oh my gosh, like that is against all like religious principles. We're doing all these archanam and all these things to like even approach the deities. And here this Babaji puts them in time out. That's against all religious principles. And then you see the gopis running off in the forest away from their families and kids and husbands in the middle of the night for another man or call her boy. That's against a religious principle. And then also, the prostitutes of Dwarka, they're not following one of the religious principles, but they're pure devotees. So in one sense, my understanding is some in the highest level of bhakti and devotion, in one sense, they're so you can, as Maharaj said, release any dharma under Bhagavad Dharma, because that is reign supreme. But even on the highest platform, many of these religious principles and these institutional laws and regulations don't really apply, because they're just operating in a different platform, and they're in a different realm in one sense. Thank you.
All good. Thank you very much. Shall we move on to Apurva Prabhu and our topics of the previous session? Apurva, your time has come, Prabhu. Just to start us off.
So he said he'll just wait till another time. 'Cause-
Oh,
He got cold feet.
yes, Atina.
Okay. Oh. You're gone.
Yeah, I'm still interested, and so I just bring it out.
You're just bringing to our attention that we did have more to talk about.
Tulsi Priya said she had more questions on
In
this.
conclusion, but I'm only one person, so I don't think I have priority over the group.
Let's see where Tina is.
Thank you so much. I would could, if others were curious, and to continue discussion where we left off last night in the Tawako Srimad Bhagavatam class, and kind of this discussion that I asked, even around if you could, in one sense, continue commenting about outside of. From an outside point of view, this is a relatively new institution. And like the chanting 16 rounds, these principles were given specifically by Srila Prabhupada. But if you were to go to India, it just seems so variegated, it's so mixed, and I don't know if amorphous is the right word. There's just no standard. People don't know how to pray. They don't know, they don't have the knowledge. And in one sense, we started saying, Maharaj, you said yesterday that, say, the Muslims and others make a very good case that that they're not taught properly, and in one sense, I'm just curious, if Srila Prabhupada didn't set these standards, how did people honor Krishna in a very practical way without being a Brahmana? Knowing how to do the worship, the deity worship, without knowing how to do the yagyas. How do they know how to worship Krishna? How do they know how to go back to Godhead when no one's reading the philosophy? And in one sense, it's just the knowledge is so spread out and it almost seems lost. Hindus don't even know why they don't eat meat. They don't even know why they celebrate, everything's just in one sense lost.
Two points come to my mind. There are sort of two traditions that carry forward the Vedic civilization. And one is the Sampradayic tradition, the tradition of the Guru Parampara, and the other is the family tradition, which is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, Kula Dharma. There's a family tradition. And those family traditions are quite strong still. So people worship because this is how my grandfather did it, and this is how my father did it, and this is how I do it. And they may or may not understand it, or they may understand it to a greater or lesser degree, but they do what they've done by family tradition. And that carries with it a certain amount of, maybe very good, it may be really all sentimental and mishmashy, depending. But the Sampradaic tradition is where your clarity comes from. This is where the teachers are handing down the standard of knowledge and practice through the Ramanuja Sampradaya, through the Madhva Sampradaya, through the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, through the Brahma Sampradaya. This Bhagavad Dharma is coming, especially in Gaudiya Sampradaya, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the Gaudiya Sampradaya. But even the Gaudiya Sampradaya, without following the Acharyas, becomes a mishmash and worse. So this Guru Parampara is essential for understanding. And we find that so many people don't really accept a bona fide guru. Maybe they have a Kula Guru, a family guru, who's kind of an official priest, but he's not really, what shall we say, Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. He hasn't heard clearly from the authorities, and he's not clearly engaged or exclusively engaged in the service of the Lord. It's kind of a family business also. Our family takes care of your family. We provide this service for you. So with that, you get certainly a mixed inheritance. But through the Sampradayas, we get understanding. Before Srila Prabhupada came, Gaudiya Sampradaya was there. Prabhupada didn't start it. He transmitted it, he systematized it and made it understandable for a global audience. Otherwise, it was going on. And before that, it was coming down in the parampara system. So, but the problem comes when people don't, even their family tradition is weak, they don't have a bona fide guru, or the guru is just a kind of a window dressing, kind of a decoration. Then you get a mess. And you have that typically also in other religious communities, we can say, where they're Christian or they're Jewish because their parents were Christian or Jewish, but they don't really know what it means. They don't know why they do what they do. It's just cultural or traditional. And then you have those who are serious teachers and serious followers. I don't want to put everything on the same level, but or we have sort of a general scientific knowledge. We all know something, but the person who takes instruction at the university and under a scientific systematic school gets to understand what's what. So if we don't do that, then we just get our sort of general impression with some of them right, some of them wrong. Does that seem, how does that seem to the others? How does that seem to you, Atina? Your hand is up again, and Tulsi Priya's is up. So whoever would like to jump in, just jump.
Thank you, Maj. I'd love to hear what Tulsi Priya has to say. I didn't want to, that was very helpful, thank you. And not to bring it to a tangential, but I thought about this, and I don't mean to be controversial, but in one sense, when you take a step back, and as many know, I've had an interest in interfaith, but there's truth and it descends in different areas. So every single tradition, every single religion will say that no, it's this is the absolute truth, and it's for all humanity, it's applicable to everyone. And in one sense it is, because truth is truth. And for example, even though, say, Christianity started in Jerusalem, and Islam in Saudi Arabia in one sense, and the Vedic, even though it's eternal, was really in India, because all the stories or all of these pure devotees in India. Of course, that doesn't mean there are only pure devotees in India. They were everywhere. And, you know, the traditions kind of started there. So from a very, very high level point of view, you know, it could be very debatable. You can say, it could seem like, okay, there's truth and God disseminates certain parts of truth in different areas. And Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga is a quote unquote Indian religion. You can say Islam is a quote unquote Middle Eastern religion, and they're all parts of truth. And why they fight so strongly that, you know, this is the end all be all, but it can be applied anywhere. So in that thought, again, I don't want to be controversial. It seems like a lot of the teachings that Srila Prabhupada say,
Go ahead and be controversial.
What was that? Oh, I can be controversial. And this is just, you know, I'm revealing some thoughts that I've had as I try to filter through, you know, my understanding, or as I encounter different faiths. But it's almost in reaction to the hodgepodge, wide mixture and misunderstanding within India. I mean, he comes over, and I know we talked about like the Mayavadis, but I never even heard that term. It's almost not really applicable in the West. And, you know, again, the example I gave of this Muslim convert, she grew up in you can call Hindu family. She grew up hearing Krishna stories. Her parents are Krishna worshipers, but then yet they'll have a Ganesh, you know, deity, which she calls an idol. And then she'll say that her parents said, God is only within and there is no external, you know, manifestation, which is, to us, it was ridiculous because Krishna is the supreme person of the Godhead and you are worshiping this form. So how could you say that? So it just seemed to be as a reaction in one sense of the hodgepodge and the wide vast of what quote unquote Hindu covers to set it straight in one sense. And it's an Indian religion. And in one sense, that's why it's like such a small portion. If you look at all the religions, Krishna consciousness is such a small portion because it's almost like in reaction to try to set things straight within the Hindu kind of context and the Indian religions to kind of like, everyone, no one's reading. It's a family passed down thing. It becomes a cultural thing, not a religious thing. No one's understanding like the real truth and everything's all kind of mixed up. Like there's Jainism, there's all these things popping up everywhere. So here it is. But it seems like if you can comment again, I don't want to call it's less applicable to like, especially in the West, how people live and some of the concepts. And maybe Srila Prabhupada was trying to expand it so that it has some sort of culture and varnashram and such. But it really seems like a quote unquote Indian religion in response to the lack of knowledge and I don't say structure within India and what quote unquote Hinduism is.
Thank you. Therefore, Prabhupada speaks of Bhagavad Dharma. By Bhagavad Dharma, he means what we find in Srimad Bhagavatam. What do we find there? Savaipum Samparo Dharma. Yato Bhaktiradvokshate. That principle by which you develop your bhakti, your devotional service to the personality of Godhead, without material motives, without interruption. That's the actual the highest religious principle, not Hindu religion, Christian religion, Muslim religion, Jewish religion. But there was an article, because we were talking about articles once published in BTG, there was an article way back called The Religion That No One Can Join. The thought is good that you can switch from being Christian to Hindu, Hindu to Jain, Jain to Muslim, and so on. But being a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you can't join and you can't quit. Everyone is. So how do we revive that understanding? If you have a means that works, great. Whatever you did, it must be good because there you are. And if you don't have a means, then take this. Or if you do have a means, Prabhupada accepted that also. You belong to whatever religion, but you take these, whatever you find that's valuable. You take these principles of spiritual advancement. You take the chanting of the holy name of God. You take the control of the mind, control of the senses. You take these things. Prabhupada said knowledge is not Christian knowledge, Hindu knowledge. It's knowledge. Gold is gold, not Christian or Hindu. So from that point of view, we don't care. It's not that we think, sometimes I see this, that, sort of a Hindu tendency in ISKCON that, if we're pushing Hinduism, if we're protecting Hinduism, then it's really great. But that's not really our principle. We're not pro-Hindu or anti-Hindu. Your Hinduism minus devotional service to the personality of Godhead is shrameva hi kevalam. It's simply a waste of time. That's the thing. So yes, it's true that when we're simply dedicated to, what shall we say, externals, then it can be very tribal, or however you want to say, sectarian. Therefore, one has to see. The great sages, they see from the platform not of Hinduism or Christianity or this, they see from the platform of love of God. They see from the platform of dedicating your whole life to God. One time, Radharani told me, Satsrit Maharaj told me, that someone asked Srila Prabhupada, is there anyone like Joan of Arc in Srimad Bhagavatam?
Tulsi Priya just put that on the chat.
Oh, thank you. Look at that. You want to see Joan of Arc in Srimad Bhagavatam? Why don't you take Joan of Arc of Srimad Bhagavatam? Any activities of devotees, that is Srimad Bhagavatam. What do you mean by Bhagavatam? Bhagavatam. Bhaga, this word comes from Bhagavan, Bhagavata, Bhagavat Shabda. The word is Bhagavata. And pertaining to Bhagavata is Bhagavata. So Bhagavata can be expanded to any unlimited. So anything in relationship with God, that is Bhagavatam. So if Joan of Arc, she was in relationship with God, she is also Bhagavata. You should expand Bhagavata in that way. Thank you for that, Tulsi Priya.
Great mind think alike.
Oh, it was very gratifying that you mentioned. Could I add something?
Yes.
This is my fanciful philosophical speculation. You can correct it if it's wrong. But Srila Prabhupada said that the Vedic culture was once expanded all over the world. And then Krishna left the planet. And the way I sort of saw it is that, okay, Vedic culture was expanded all over the world. And in a way, it's like when you have a body and it becomes septic, what goes first? The hands, the feet, the legs, everything goes to the center to be maintained. And so we see in other cultures, if we know what to look for, we can see pockets of devotional service in other faiths and other cultures. Even historically, I think there's somebody in the Caucasus region or somewhere in Russia, they talk about Krishan, who is like this superhero myth that they have, and they, devotees have tried to relate that to Krishna. I don't know if that's true, but I guess what I'm just saying is that, if Vedic culture was expanded all over the world, then it would have had different expressions in those parts of the world according to, the climate, the conditions of the place, although the essence of it would have been there. And then after Krishna left, the outer parts that are less proximate to where Krishna was, they die off first. And then it gets closer. And then the heart of it is in India, because that's where Krishna appeared. Like I said, it's a fanciful speculation, but I think most devotees, if they're not biased or what's the word, partisan, they can see bhakti in other cultures, and it's just, I think it's a matter of lack of proximity to where Krishna was when he was physically, when he was personally present, I mean to say, that you see it isn't so evident as it once was. But we, that's a speculation because we don't know what it was like when it was all over the world. We don't know what it was like if it was in North America or Russia or China or whatever. But Prabhupada said it was all over the world. So how do we take that?
Of course, if it's proximity, we'd expect Delhi to be doing a lot better. I have a thought. I didn't hear this from Srila Prabhupada, but I'll offer this and you can see what you think. In Bhagavatam and in Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu and elsewhere, we find that there are three classes of devotees. There's first class, second class, and third class. The first class, the third class, they don't have very much knowledge and they don't have very much faith. They're weak on both counts. And the second class, they have some knowledge, some faith. And the first class, they have full knowledge and full faith. Or looking at it from another point of view, the third class devotees just see themselves in God. That's what they see. And they love God, but they don't appreciate, they don't have much regard for anyone else. The second class, they make friends with the devotees, they worship God, they avoid the atheists, and they're merciful to the childlike non-devotees. And the first class, they see everyone engaged in devotional service. They see the Lord and they see everyone engaged in the service of the Lord. So my thought is that there's a kinship aligned with these three classes that extends beyond the boundaries of any particular religious tradition. That a third class Jewish devotee is not that much different from a third class Christian devotee or a third class Hindu devotee or a third class any other, even third class Krishna conscious devotee. A second class devotee will be of a similar nature across traditions, and the first class devotees will be similar. They'll have strong knowledge, they'll have strong faith, they'll be dedicated to God, but they'll see everyone engaged in the service of the Lord. So one almost feels more of a kinship with those who are in a similar bracket, regardless of one recognizes, they say it takes one to know one. So a second class devotee will feel an affinity for other second class devotees across traditions. The third class devotees, of course, don't feel affinity, but anyone else will see that they're all kind of the same. It's just me and God. It's just me and God. And that God is in my temple, but God is not anywhere else. God is in my church, God is in my temple, God is in my mosque, but God is not there for anyone else. Or anyway, may or may not be, but those people don't count. So it's an observation. And therefore Prabhupada says Joan of Arc of the Srimad Bhagavatam, taking her as being advanced in devotional service. So it doesn't matter what religious tradition she's coming from. If she's advanced, she's advanced. So that's a thought. I don't know. Again, I didn't hear it from Srila Prabhupada, and this question will not appear on your Bhakti Shastri exam. Yes, Manji.
Few months back, I was hearing something from Anatama Prabhu. Anatama Prabhu was telling very nicely. I think it was interfaith
Yeah, some interfaith dialogue.
Yeah, dialogue. So Prabhuji was telling, like Prabhupada said, yeah, like initially, whatever you are doing, just add one more thing. Add Krishna in your add Krishna on like read books about Krishna, so like that. Because I heard, I don't know, I am not able to explain.
Yeah, the Srila Prabhupada said whatever
Yeah.
what people of other religions or what have you, just add Krishna, you know, read these books, take advantage.
Yeah.
It's an interesting discussion what we really think about interfaith dialogue, even what our dialogue partners think about interfaith dialogue. To what extent do we genuinely think they're onto something or in need of something that only we have? It's a big topic for the interfaith community. Well, we have Meena, we have Atina.
Hare Krishna.
And we have Tulsi Priya. Yes,
Um,
Meena.
Concerning the outside of India and regionalism, I think I briefly looked at Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Krishna Samhita, and he discusses in quite a lot of depth and detail about proximity and these different cultures and how this particular topic, I can't add more than that, but that he does discuss in what I saw this particular topic in great detail.
Someone will have to do a book report and tell us what he said. Thank you. Tina?
Hi. Someone said, thank you for muting. Yes, I understand that it's been said that previously, again, kind of Pangea, there was one religion, it was the Vedic culture, there was, again, one emperor, all of that. And then as time progressed and as Tulsi Priya said, Krishna left, then it kind of getting dispersed. But I'm saying, I'm not sure if so, please help me understand. That doesn't make sense. Two things. You could argue, when Srila Prabhupada left for America, one of his friends said, oh, you're going to America. He said, no, Srimad Bhagavatam is going to America. But if the Vedic literature were everywhere, Srimad Bhagavatam would already be here. There is no need to spread Krishna consciousness. There would be some remnants of that everywhere you go. But then obviously you have, say, the Abrahamic religions, which actually lie completely separately, completely outside of the Vedas. And it's, you see, in one sense, to support the argument that the Vedas were everywhere, oh, the Greek mythology, maybe the Egyptian mythology, all these demigods, and then Zeus is really Indra. So we say, oh, that's the parallel of how the Vedic literature it was everywhere, and then somehow it got morphed into these other kind of religions or whatever mythology in these different areas. So that's one comment. But then to be honest, my understanding is that the Abrahamic religions literally came about because of that they were polytheists. Those who were worshiping many gods, not knowing there was one supreme God. So the problem with I guess I'm say the Vedic literature being everywhere is that it got corrupt, and then people, the Abrahamic religions came about. It is as an exact reaction to the fact that people were worshiping many gods, and to make it now one God, monotheistic. And so I know there's two sides of the coin there where I'm going, I'm not really sure, like, how is that possible? Because if that were the case, then some remnants of the Vedic culture would be everywhere, and it's not in the US. It wasn't. And that's why Srila Prabhupada had to bring Srimad Bhagavatam to America. If we're already here, then Srimad Bhagavatam would already be here. But then you also, again, do see it maybe in Europe where it's closer to India, where it might have spread, like that Pangea kind of idea. And then because it got so corrupt, Abrahamic religion had to be established to bring it back to monotheistic, this view of one God. If you can maybe comment with comments, thank you.
Well, really interesting ideas, but I wanted to see what Lakshmi Mani Mataji had to say, because her hand went up in the midst of your comments. Did you want to respond to something about that?
It wasn't exactly in regards to what she was saying, but I was just referring to Bhagavad Gita 17th, 18th chapter, where, you know, the divisions of faith are given. That's what it's called, the title of the chapter, but it talks about many different things. But it talks about things in general that could apply to any religious tradition, any spiritual tradition. It doesn't just talk about Krishna consciousness exactly. It talks about, you know, how one behaves, what motivates one's behavior, what kind of austerities one does and why one does them, what kind of food one eats and why one eats them, and what kind of charity one gives and why a person gives such a charity, how people see other people, whether they're inclusive or exclusive. And those things determine, to some extent, where people fall on a scale of, you know, religiosity, so to speak, ranging from the mode of goodness down into the mode of passion and ultimately into ignorance and below. And when one is closer to the mode of goodness, it's to be understood that coming in contact with Krishna is easier. So, or coming in contact with God is easier. I never thought Prabhupada wanted me to be Indian. That never occurred to me, ever.
I think you're speaking to that same point that Prabhupada made, that knowledge is knowledge, and that these, when you take, say, the modes of nature, that understanding of the modes of nature, and you look around, it doesn't really matter whether someone's in India or Fiji or Australia or Alaska. You see the same characteristics. Those where you'll find people in goodness, you'll find people in passion, you'll find people in ignorance, and anyone can take advantage of this understanding. You don't have to be Vedic or Indian or so on. Knowledge is knowledge. Yeah.
I was just in relation to what Athena said. There, I don't know why I'm getting this. I don't know why there's a. Okay.
Go ahead.
It seems like, yeah, there's signs of Vedic culture in a lot of places. If you go to Mexico, you'll see deities of Varaha. If you go to Cambodia, you'll see Angkor Wat, where there's, you know, huge Vishnus and stairs with the demigods and the demons churning the ocean of milk. But that doesn't mean they were following Krishna consciousness. They may have known about certain aspects of Vedic culture or the Bhagavatam or the Vedas, but they didn't necessarily take up the process of Krishna consciousness. So they're not necessarily the same.
I find it intriguing more than anything else, these different cultures that develop all over the world with, what would you say, somewhat congruent or corresponding ideas. Sadhaputta Prabhu went into this about the cosmology found in different parts of the world, where they'll all have an ocean, they'll all have a mountain, they'll all have a serpent, and so on.
They'll all have an art.
They'll all have an art, yeah. So, you know, are they sharing in an ancient tradition of understanding? Are they independently developing these ideas? This is all intriguing. I doubt that we'll, by any sort of empiric process, get to the bottom of how this all came about, sort out the history of the world. But certainly one finds it at least suggestive of some sort of a global relationship. And the alternative being that, well, all these similar ideas popped up in different parts of the world independently. In one sense, we don't ultimately care. We're going to worship Krishna whether he's, at the gopis, they don't care if he's God or not. So we're going to worship Krishna regardless of whether he's an Indian god or a Hindu god or whatever. We're interested in Krishna. We're not interested in Hinduism or India per se. But we find the qualifications of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Krishna, so we're going to serve him. So that's one thought. And I mean, since we have 2 minutes left, Yasmina's already put it. Well, I thought she hasn't unmuted herself. She just put her hand down. Okay, that leaves Tulsi Priya, the remaining hand.
Oh, I don't, my really wacky, and it's sort of related to what you were saying about like personalities recognizing each other in terms of their devotional level, but I'll leave it for the next meeting and the next Istagosthi, since there's not much time, and it's kind of tangential.
All right, then sort of to wrap it up, it seems like we have an agreement among ourselves, and we probably agree with others from other communities that our ultimate business in life is to develop our love for the personality of Godhead. The Mayavadis, of course, have a very different point of view. And it's interesting that there are Christian Mayavadis, Muslim Mayavadis, Jewish Mayavadis. There are those in all sorts of traditions who come to an impersonal conclusion of the absolute truth. But there's certainly a kinship. First of all, we can say there's a kinship among those who are inclined to follow religious principles. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you read Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says that's so many species of life. Few are human beings. Out of the human beings, then we come to those who are inclined to follow religious principles. They're the demonic, they don't want to hear about it. And then there are the godly people. They have some interest in spiritual understanding, that they want to get free from material entanglement and develop a divine understanding. Then out of those, again, it comes smaller. We come to those who are devotees of the personality of Godhead, then those who are devotees of Krishna. Finally, those who are devotees of Radha Krishna. But there's, along that hierarchy, there's a lot of shared territory, a lot of room for shared territory and shared understanding. One doesn't have to be a devotee of Radha and Krishna to be devoted to God, but those who are devoted to God can be attracted to Radha and Krishna. And shall we stop here? Are there any last thoughts? Yes, Lakshmi Moniji. You have to unmute yourself or we won't get the benefit of those last thoughts.
Amazing. And it's, in a sense, it's like, I don't know why this, in a sense, it's like we're something for everybody. Someone says, I believe God is a light, white light. And we say, oh, well, that's in our scripture. And then, well, I believe God's in the heart of everybody. Well, that's in our scripture also. And I believe that there's a supreme person. Yeah, we believe that too. And I believe there's many different, God pantheistic. Yeah, that's in our scripture also. So, wherever you bite it, you can get some sweetness there. But the ultimate fruit, the highest fruit is, what it is. And not everybody is there, but everybody can get there eventually. Anyway, just thinking about that our Shastra kind of says yes to everybody on some level.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Well, thank you all again. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
Jai Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Maharaj.
Hare Ho, Gaur Premanande.